And so you guys are in the no code business. What the hell does no code mean?
So I love the question because everyone's like, "There's code somewhere. Show us the code. Show us where it is." And the reality is, I have a team of engineers. I've got about 100 of the top engineers I've ever met in the world, and like I worked with 400,000 people at Citigroup and 70,000 at MetLife, and we collected about 100 of the best engineers across all industries. They code. There's no question that they're coding, but what they're coding looks to a user, what we call a business engineer is the term we came up with, as a Lego block. And so they're coding and basically hiding the code from someone to say, oh, you want to basically do a payment using Stripe. I mean, what an amazing story this week on Stripe and the results. You want to use Stripe to basically get a payment for a new subscriber in your company. You could drag in, a text box for first name. You could drag in Stripe as a component. We already work with them and integrate with them. Oh, you want to use your bank account, bring in Plaid. And all these components, we code the reusable component that you simply drag and drop in. So it's a visual designer tool. And what's different about us than a Wix, maybe, which is no code. Wix is no code, and people have been using it for a long time for building websites, is what we drag and drop could replace the most complex trading platforms, transaction systems, 20 million transactions a second type systems, exchanges. At this point, we look at financial services where we started, and public sector and healthcare. And we look at these sectors and say, we could basically handle 100% of what they're doing today with code without a question, with the most complex use cases you could imagine, without anything more than dragging and dropping. And so no code specifically is, there's no ancient Greek. And for the first time, you're getting scale at IT. And we don't generate code, we don't let you inject code, and which goes against all principles, everything that's out there today, and all the technology is supporting engineers coding. We're basically saying it's a whole new way to create software.
So really what you're doing is, if somebody kind of uses a consumer example, something like a Squarespace, if I want to build a website, I don't know how to code, I can go in, I can drag and drop, I can add functionality. Really what I'm doing is kind of taking these containerized snippets of code, and I'm adding that functionality, kind of as I see fit to my customized needs. But really what's happened is it was almost like the code was pre-written for me, and therefore I can just use that to do it without having to have the technical knowledge to actually write the individual code. Is that fair?
It's very fair. That's exactly right. Yep.
So as you think through this, most people know Squarespace. They know other sorts of what I'll call consumer facing technology, right? Things that I want to build that have maybe not mission critical elements to it. But my understanding is what you guys are doing is you're building these no code solutions for some of the most important software and some of the most kind of mission critical software for our business and for very important large businesses. And so how does that change the way you think about building some of these no code tools, and how reliable they have to be, how resilient they have to be, and just how, frankly, usable they have to be from a user experience standpoint inside of these large organizations?
Yeah, actually, so the words are faster, better, cheaper, what we always hear. So Anthony, if you were in a corporation, you would hear, and you were my business partner, you'd say, Gary, I want you to build this great onboarding system to onboard new customers to our bank, and it should be fast and efficient. And I basically would look at you and say, that's great. Do you want it faster, better, or cheaper? Choose two. So what we did was very unique. When we said no code means no code you could inject, no code you generate, really what we're saying is scale and applications for the first time, which means that you're on the same version of code. So you start building today. I'm going to make this up. You're going to start building an onboarding solution today for your customers using Encore. You're going to be using technology on the same version of software as every major bank, every major financial institution, every hospital, every healthcare provider and insurance company. You're starting where they already left off, which is the entire difference, fundamental difference between us and everything before us. What I mean by that is you could take any solution today, take a CRM package, which is simple. Everyone's been talking CRM, software as a service, for years and years. They provide CRM as a simple base, and then you code on top of it, which means if you needed a CRM and your partner needed a CRM, you're both starting from 50% and you're coding 50%. And now you're locked in to a technology, and you're not getting the benefit of what your partner did versus what you did. And basically you could separate that into divisions of a company. Every company division is starting with ground zero. and they're not benefiting each other. They're not benefiting the company or the industry. Well, what we did was we said, look, no one else could code but us. That's it. We're the ones coding the components. And what it does mean is that when a new business requirement comes in, for example, someone needed a slider to be able to do a loan. We built loan software to do loans. We built the rent relief software, just launched as a product last week. And so a slider is something you see on the screen. When you build a slider, someone needed it. When we created that component slider, every customer automatically got it because they can't inject code, so they're guaranteed to work on the latest version of software. They're automatically being upgraded. There's no more legacy. There's no more, hey, you're using Java, you're using C# or C+ or any other code out there. It's gone. So, it's basically you're guaranteed to be on the same version of software, which means that you're going to benefit from the community of users all on the same platform, all testing, all cybersecurity testing and pen testing the same software. That's what no code means to us. That's exactly what it means in the difference for us.
So how does this change kind of the software development process? So inside of an organization, obviously I still have software engineers. Now I have these no code tools. How do I change the way that I build products?
Yeah, it's a great point. So today, if you step into an organization and say, hey, how are you building software today? You're going to have a business analyst that writes a Word document. They're going to give it to an engineering team who's going to work with a chief architect to come up with a schematic, a blueprint, and here's the technology we'll use and the integration points. They'll start coding. And you'll develop test plans off to the side, and the test plans will be based on what the business requirements said. The test plans will start and basically find out that technology after a year of coding didn't deliver what they thought they'd get. And this is in what we call the waterfall approach, traditional waterfall approach. And then at the end of the year, technology would be on become lawyers. I've done it, where you become an attorney. You're like, well, business, let me show you. This is what you said you wanted. This is what I did. You didn't tell me you needed a button on the screen to submit and save. So we didn't put a button on the screen to save, so the application doesn't save. Like that's what's happening today. And I know that's a little bit extreme. On the Agile approach, which I was one of the first pioneers of Agile in large corporations, and the idea of moving faster in the businesses at the table, it's really good for delivering incremental value, but it gets to the point that we celebrate success. Hey, we built this. And as a business partner, you go, but it doesn't do anything. It's not yet what I need. I needed that other stuff that's in the backlog. So with Unqork, what we've done is, if you think about coding, we replaced the coding aspect. And now business users could be technologists. The people coding could be. The reality is the person writing the Word document could now do 80% of the work in Unqork without any help. They could actually start to configure the screens and the rules and the integrations, and they could do the design. They then work with a technologist to do that last piece, all in Unqork, the integration mapping, the data mapping to the legacy systems, to the core systems, the books and records, all of the complexity around that's done inside Unqork, not outside as a unified platform. And the reality is what we're finding is we're shortening the coding time. We're 200 times faster than a Java developer. We could sit down and show you. If a Java developer was taking this long to do it, we're 200 times faster than that. Overall, because you're still doing requirements gathering. You're still doing testing. You're still doing test plans. You're still, most importantly, the business is changing requirements on the fly throughout the entire program. And that's expected. So all that results in, we're finding about a 3 times faster Agile project. Agile as in, it's going to be incremental. Let's go as fast as we can. And there's no risk to deployment, no risk to change. If you didn't get it right the first time, we'll get it right the second time immediately here. That's what's different. It's also resulting in 3 times cheaper is what we're hearing back from customers than anything they've seen. So that's 3 times is a metric no one's ever achieved in technology before. You heard 30% better or 50% better sometimes, but 3 times. But most importantly, Anthony, what we've actually now done, we came up with what we call a line of code equivalency. So if you were going to code this a traditional way with JavaScript or Node or HTML or whatever you're going to use, we actually came up with a way to take an Unqork app and generate the estimated lines of code it would have taken. And so today in production, we're running for customers, 80, 90 million lines of code equivalency already, with 350 million lines of code in UAT and about 1 billion lines of code equivalency in staging, ready, all going through to production. But we were able to use that to estimate defects. And a defect, people don't talk about defects, but For every like 50 lines of code, there's one defect traditionally that's available there. I mean, squiggly brackets are hard to get right, and semicolons, and it's names, and everything's case sensitive for those who don't know. It's hard to code. I mean, I look at banks that talk about, you can read about banks telling that they're going to train their traders on Python. And I look at that and I'm like, you want sympathy from them. You're trying to basically create sympathy. It's nothing to do with productivity. It's like you want them to feel bad for you because it's hard to code. That's not what its answer is. But reality is it's hard to. That one defect for every 50 lines of code is an estimate. We're 600 times higher quality. So the faster, better, cheaper, it's 3 times, and 600 times higher quality. That's the difference that we bring to the table versus everyone else in software today, every other company out there.
So when you think about the differences that you're making, it's really on the back end, it's in the software development process, it's in the integration into the business. Do the users of the software, if I'm somebody who's signing up through that payment flow, if I'm somebody who's leveraging it as an internal or external customer, do I tell any difference between code that was kind of custom written versus the no code product?
No, so we are so proud to be invisible to the world. So you might be using us in a bank today. You might be using us, in healthcare. You might be using us in public sector or insurance. We're completely invisible. You'll never know Uncork exists. There was a really cool charity I joined as an advisor called Play On, where they performed CBS. The end of the year, last year, there's a primetime special we put on with all the best music stars, John Bon Jovi and others. The entire site called playonlive.org is 100% on Quark. And you would never know it's there, except we put for the first time powered by Uncork. It's the first stamp we ever put on any site because it was a charity that we helped create. But you'll never know it's us other than that. And so the idea is we're a platform to create software. No one ever should know we exist. You shouldn't know we're storing your data, we're encrypting your data, we're doing it in a way which banks trust us with their customer data when they wouldn't trust any other technology. And because we come from that world, we understand that world. And so with that, it's done very differently. We don't exist. We take on your experience, your user experience. So in some cases, Anthony, New York City, I think it's the best case, how fast we can move. So you've used, as a consumer, you used products like GoFundMe and Seamless Web before. I guarantee I'm on those products both all the time. Great consumer products. Here we are, we had a New York City call from the commissioner come on March 6th last year and said, how quick could Uncork stand up a COVID tracking system to track all 20 million tri-state residents that might call 311 and all consumers who want to self-report symptoms because this COVID thing's coming. And this time we were joking before the call, Anthony, but this time I was just coming back from presenting at Montgomery Center in California. I was coming back to LA. There was people wearing masks and I thought they were crazy. I'm like, what's going on here? So we actually received a call on Friday at 5 p.m. On Monday morning, we demoed a production-ready secured system that already went through pen testing, vulnerability assessment, performance assessing to handle all 20 million requests. And we became the system of record. And we basically worked with New York City to deploy that within that week, which is unheard of, to go without one line of code. And then what happened was it succeeded. And this is typically why we have 145% net dollar retention rate, which is incredible. It succeeded. And we have a call to say, how quick could you create a donation tracking system like GoFundMe? So we created with them, we enabled New York City to create on our platform. Within 3 days, they created GoFundMe equivalent donation site to collect $150 million of donations without one engineer standing up. And the coolest thing was, and this is what I get to tell my kids about, which was, they came back and said, we need to get food to senior citizens. And if you were in New York City, which you were, if you ever saw a National Guard loading a box into a taxi at any point, there's all these hubs in Brooklyn and New York City. And that was powered by Uncork, 100%. We basically created the equivalent of Seamless Web, the company, and New York City created it on Uncork. New York City was able to hire about 18,000 delivery drivers that were unemployed to basically deliver food to seniors in need. And I think the number I heard was it delivered 75 million food orders. 75 million. So whenever I see on Amazon, which was we delivered 14 million meals, we actually, and Uncork enabled 75 million meals in just a few months that it was, there, which to me, software, it's back to the art of possible. It's got to enable us to live a better life. I kind of feel like software today is like middle school years with acne. Like it's uncomfortable. You walk into a hospital or a doctor's office, you're given paper and a pen still today.